She got thick skin and a soft soul. God made her fire in a world so cold. They judge her frame, but not her fight. She walk in church and her room get light. I see it different, that's the truth I stand on. She ain't your sin, bro, she God's backbone. They see hips, I see heart. She from the quiet, not the dark. She say no, they say fast and call her names, but she won't smash. They scared of power in a curvy frame. Treat her like a flame, then a curse to flame. But I've been watching how she moving grace. Even when they throw shame in her face. Ooh, let the lashes fool you, she pure. Whole life in pain, but her spirit endure. I seen her pray when the room was wild. She ain't loud, but her silence loud. She holy and hood, yeah, both can be true. God gave her looks, but her soul break through. They whisper lies, but I seen the proof. She ain't what they say, she the living truth. She got thick skin and a soft soul. God made her fire in a world so cold. They judge her frame, but not her fight. She walk in church and the room get light. I see her different, that's the truth I stand on. She ain't your sin, bro, she God's backbone. Met a man who sold her lies, promised heaven, gave her highs. He used her beauty, took a spark, left her drunken in the dark. She came back bruised, but she ain't brave. Dropped the shame right at heaven's gate.
To the ancestors, known and unknown, Ashe. To the gods, known and unknown, Ashe. All the praise, all the glory be to the Most High. What's going on, guys? It's your favorite Cosmic Warrior, back at you with another Galactic Transmission. So this rising, we're going to tap back into the lost secrets of Nag Hammadi. And we're going to finish off part 1, which is Foundations Understanding the Gnostic Worldview. The mythic imagination of the Gnostics. To read the Gnostic texts is to enter a world where myth, symbol, and spirit are woven together in a language that refuses to separate the cosmic from the personal. What we find in these writings is not theology in the modern sense, not systematic doctrine, nor abstract metaphysics, but something closer to a sacred storytelling, a language of mythic imagination that seeks to express the inexpressible. For the Gnostics, myth was not fantasy. It was a vessel of truth, a means of describing spiritual realities that cannot be contained in literal speech. Just as a dream can reveal aspects of ourselves that waking consciousness resists, the Gnostic myths function as mirrors of the soul, revealing inner dynamics through cosmic drama. The vision presented in these texts is often vast and unfamiliar, filled with unfamiliar names and elaborate sequences of emanation and descent. We encounter figures like Sophia, the divine wisdom who longs for the light and whose fall gives rise to creation, aeons, emanations of the divine mind who dwell in the pleroma, the fullness of spiritual reality, and the demiurge, a blind creator god who, mistaking himself for the highest being, fashions the material world in ignorance of the true source. These stories are not meant to be read as literal cosmologies. Rather, they describe the journey of the soul, the drama of consciousness itself, its longing, its exile, its confusion, and its eventual awakening. They speak to an inner memory that were not made for bondage, but for return, not for ignorance, but for recognition. At the heart of the mythic imagination is the belief that something has gone wrong, not simply with the individual, but with reality itself. The world we inhabit is fractured, deceptive, often hostile to truth. It is a world of amnesia, where the soul forgets its origin and becomes entangled in a false sense of identity. The Gnostic myth gives form to that condition, and, more importantly, points the way beyond it. But these myths are not mapped in conventional sense. They do not offer a single path, nor a tidy sequence of events. They are invocations, invitations to contemplate the deeper patterns of existence. They ask us not only to understand, but to recognize, to see in Sophia's fall the echo of her own exile, to hear in the call of the aeons a resonance with the longing in our hearts, to name without the figure of the demiurge the inner and outer forces that confuse us, bind us, and call themselves truth. The mythic imagination of the Gnostic is, ultimately, not a theory about the universe, but a mirror in which the soul perceives itself. It is a language of remembrance, drawing upon the sacred art of symbol to speak of a reality that no dogma could fully contain. To approach these myths with reverence is not to believe them literally, but to engage them as living texts, not only of a forgotten religion, but of the human condition itself. For those who are willing to listen, they offer not just insight into a past worldview, but a deeper invitation to see, to feel, and perhaps to remember something essential that we, too, may have buried long ago. The aeons, the pleroma, and the fall into matter. At the heart of the Gnostic cosmology lies a myth, not a myth in the modern sense of fiction or falsehood, but in the sacred sense, a sacred narrative meant to convey the truths that logic alone cannot reach. These are not stories to be taken literally, but symbols woven into narrative form, offering the seeker a way to understand the soul's condition, the nature of the divine, and the origin of suffering. According to many of the Nag Hammadi texts, before time and matter, before heaven and earth, there existed only the pleroma, a word that means fullness. This is the realm of pure spiritual reality, timeless, formless, whole. The pleroma is not a place, but a state of being, a luminous totality in which all aspects of the divine are in perfect harmony. Within this fullness dwells the aeons, emanations of the divine source. Each aeon represents a quality, a presence, a spiritual attribute of the divine mind, thought, truth, grace, silence, light, wisdom. They are not gods in themselves, but aspects of the one, flowing out in pairs, in balance, in love. This divine unfolding is not creation through force or command. It is expression through overflowing being. The aeons do not act, they are. But in one version of the Gnostic myth, one aeon reaches beyond what is given. Sophia, wisdom, desires to know the ineffable source directly, without her counterpart, without balance. In this desire, she gives rise to a flawed emanation, the demiurge, a creator being who, unaware of the pleroma, fashions a world out of ignorance and incompleteness. This act is the beginning of the cosmos as we know it, a material world shaped by a lower principle, governed not by perfect light, but by distorted reflection. The demiurge, thinking himself supreme, creates his own image, without understanding that he is a shadow of a greater light. And yet, even in this world, sparks of the true light remain, hidden within matter, buried in human souls, exiled from the pleroma, but not severed from it. The divine essence waits. It waits to be remembered. It waits to be reclaimed. This is the fall, not a punishment for sin, but a cosmic dislocation, a forgetting of origin. The human soul, according to the Gnostic vision, carries within itself the memory of the pleroma, the echo of a fullness it can no longer name, but deeply longs for. The path of gnosis is the path of return, not by erasing the world, but by seeing through it, awakening the spark, and walking the long road back to unity. This myth is not meant to replace history, but to illuminate interior experiences. It speaks to a condition many recognize, the sense of estrangement, of being in a world that is not quite home, of searching for a truth that no institution seems able to offer. It offers a language not of escape, but of transformation. The aeons, the pleroma, the fall, these are not just cosmic events. They are the architecture of the soul, and their story is, in some profound way, our own. The demiurge and the world of illusion. To understand the Gnostic vision of the human condition, we must linger for a moment on one of its most provocative and often misunderstood figures, the demiurge. Described in various texts as the creator of the material world, the demiurge is not, for the Gnostics, the ultimate divine source. He is a lesser being, born of imbalance, lacking knowledge of the fullness from which he unconsciously emerged. In Gnostic cosmology, the demiurge is often depicted as ignorant, arrogant, and blind to the higher reality of the pleroma. He believes himself to be the only God and claims absolute authority over creation. Some texts go further, naming him Yaldabaoth, or associating him with attributes of chaos, pride, and deception. Yet even in his distortion, the demiurge is not inherently evil. He is ignorant, a being who creates without awareness of the truth. His creation, the material world, reflects his ignorance. It is not wholly false, nor is it wholly real. It is a mixture of light and shadow, form and distortion. It carries echoes of the divine source, but filtered through a fractured lens. As such, it becomes a place of confusion, suffering, and forgetfulness, where the soul, descended from the pleroma, becomes trapped in forms, identities, and illusions that obscure its true origin. This world is not hell, but it is, in the Gnostic view, a kind of sleep, a state in which the human spirit is conditioned to accept the visible as totality, to mistake imitation for truth, structure for meaning. The demiurge governs not only through the outer forms of matter and law, but through inner mechanisms, fear, distraction, and the enforcement of false certainties. It is important to understand that this myth does not necessarily suggest hostility towards nature or embodiment. Some Gnostic texts do indeed express a harsh dualism, but others are more subtle, viewing the material world not as evil itself, but as imperfect, incomplete, and misunderstood. The problem is not the world, but our perception of it. Our tendency to live on the surface of things, never questioning what lies beneath. The Gnostic path is not about rejecting the world, but about piercing its veil, learning to see through the illusions constructed by the demiurge and his powers, and recovering a deeper vision grounded in the soul's divine memory. The demiurge may think he rules, but he does not possess the fullness of truth. That truth lies hidden in the heart of each seeker, in the spark of gnosis, in the quiet recognition that the visible world is not all there. In this light, the figure of the demiurge becomes less of a literal being and more of a symbol of spiritual confusion, the part of consciousness that insists on control, authority, separation, and rigid definition. He is the voice that says, "There is nothing beyond this," while gnosis whispers, "There is so much more." To begin the path of awakening is not to battle the demiurge, but to see through its illusions, to claim the inner light, and to begin the slow, steady return to a truth that never left, even when it was forgotten. Hidden and hunted, the suppression of Gnostic wisdom. The voices we now encounter in the Nag Hammadi text did not disappear because they were unimportant or unpersuasive. They were silenced, deliberately, systematically. As the early Christian movement began to shift from a loose network of spiritual communities to an institutional religion aligned with imperial power, the theological diversity that had once marked its first centuries became increasingly uncomfortable, even dangerous to those seeking unity, order, and control. Among the most destabilizing of these alternative voices were the Gnostics. The Gnostic vision, with its emphasis on inner revelation over external authority, direct knowing over passive belief, the symbolic, mystical insight over fixed doctrine, stood in sharp tension with the emerging orthodoxy. It offered a spirituality that could not be contained with ecclesiastical structures, one that bypassed priesthood, defied hierarchy, and interpreted the figure of Christ in ways that challenged the theological center of the institutional church. The response was neither neutral nor gradual. By the 2nd and 3rd centuries, bishops and theologians such as, I'm not naming those names, I don't know them, were actively waiting against Gnostic teachers and texts, branding them heretics, blasphemers, corrupters of true faith. Their writings survived precisely because they were copied, canonized, and integrated into the growing machinery of church doctrine. The Gnostics, by contrast, left behind few copies of their own works, not because they lacked depth or insight, but because their communities were marginalized, persecuted, and eventually erased. Their texts were destroyed, their voices forgotten, their wisdom driven underground. That we have access to them now is due not to preservation by official channels, but to acts of resistance. Monks or mystics who, recognizing their value, buried them in desert sands rather than seeing them lost forever. The suppression of the Gnostic wisdom was not merely an intellectual disagreement. It was a spiritual, political, and psychological act. The deliberate narrowing of acceptable religious experience, the centralization of spiritual authority, and the marginalization of a vision that affirmed the divine within every person. It marked the turning point at which Christianity shifted from a movement of seekers to a system of belief, codified, defended, and enforced. In this text, orthodoxy did not win because it was more true, but because it was more aligned with power. Theologies that emphasized submission, obedience, and external mediation were more compatible with empire. Gnostic texts, with their myths of hidden wisdom and their warnings against blind allegiance, threatened that alignment, and so they were buried, both literally and metaphorically. But truth, once spoken, is not so easily destroyed. What the Nag Hammadi discovery revealed in 1945 was not only a body of lost literature, it was the return of a voice, a thread of spiritual memory that had survived in silence, waiting for the right moment to hear again, to be heard again. The texts had not vanished. They had not been hidden, as much by history as by intention. Their reemergence was not only archaeological, it was symbolic, even prophetic. For centuries, the Gnostic path was hunted and suppressed. Today, it returns not in oppression, but as an invitation, offering a forgotten dimension of Christian spirituality and a reminder that the soul, once awakened, cannot be silenced forever. Theology, heresy, and the empire. The early centuries of Christianity were not shaped solely by spiritual devotion. They were equally marked by struggle, a struggle for coherence, for authority, and ultimately for survival. In this context, the boundaries of belief became battlegrounds, and what we now call heresy was not merely an error in doctrine, it was a threat to unity and therefore to power. By the time Constantine legalized Christianity in the early 4th century and convened the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, the church had already begun moving away from the fluid, mystical diversity of its earlier years. With imperial favor came a new imperative to establish a single, unified version of the faith, one that could support social order, religious identity, and political stability across the vast and diverse empire. Theology, in this new configuration, became more than a search for truth. It became a tool for governance. The central doctrines of orthodoxy, such as the divinity of Christ, the nature of sin and salvation, and the authority of the church, were not only metaphysical statements, they were foundations of institutional legitimacy. To question them was to weaken the coherence of the whole. The Gnostics, with their symbolic cosmologies and emphasis on personal revelation, represented a very different kind of religious consciousness, one that could not easily be codified, regulated, or enforced. They read the figure of Christ not as a sacrifice to appease divine wrath, but as a revealer of forgotten truth. They spoke of divine wisdom as feminine, of the material world as flawed, and of salvation as an inner awakening, not a reward for obedience. For a church increasingly aligned with empire, this was not only theologically suspect, it was destabilizing. And so, Gnostic teachings were not merely criticized, they were officially condemned. Theologians such as cataloged their doctrines, labeled their teachers dangerous, and insisted that their visions were corruptions of the truth. Over time, the category of heresy became a convenient label for any expression of Christian thought that challenged the emerging norm. Why these teachings threaten power. To understand why the Gnostic path was so forcefully suppressed, we must go beyond theology and examine the structure of spiritual power itself. At the heart of institutional religion is mediation, the belief that the divine must be accessed through authorized channels, priests, sacraments, dogma, holy books. This structure creates a sacred hierarchy, and with it, a system of control. The power to define truth becomes inseparable from the power to rule hearts and minds. Gnostic spirituality, by contrast, is fundamentally non-hierarchical. It teaches that the divine spark dwells within each person, and that access to the source of truth, gnosis, is immediate, personal, and unmediated. There is no need for institutional validation, no reliance on external authority. The sacred is not something to be given by the church. It is something to be remembered from within. This decentralization of power was inherently threatening to an emerging religious system seeking cohesion. It determined the priesthood, relativized scripture, and placed ultimate authority not in councils or bishops, but in inner experience. In a society moving towards centralization and control, both religious and political, such ideas were intolerable. Moreover, the Gnostic emphasis on myth, metaphor, and paradox resisted the kinds of rigid doctoral formulas that orthodoxy required. Where orthodoxy sought clear definitions of God, Christ, salvation, creation, the Gnostics moved in opposite direction, towards mystery, towards inner resonance, towards truths that could not be fully captured in language. This made their thought not only unorthodox, but unimaginable. They were not simply wrong, they were uncontainable, and that is why they had to be erased. Yet what could not be destroyed was the longing they spoke to, the desire for a truth that is not imposed but recognized, for a spirituality that is not policed but lived, for a wisdom that is not dictated, but discovered. This is what remains when the structures of control fall silent. This is what the Nag Hammadi texts preserve. Not just ancient theology, but a vision of freedom, still glowing beneath centuries of dust. The forgotten legacy. What was lost when Gnosis was buried. When the scrolls of Nag Hammadi were sealed in clay jars and hidden in the Egyptian sands, it was not simply to protect parchment. It was to protect a way of seeing the world that no longer had a place in the rising tide of religious power. These texts were not merely labeled heretical because they possessed theological differences. They were buried because they offered something radically different, a vision of the divine and of humanity that could not be controlled, owned, or institutionalized. What was lost when Gnosis was buried was not just a collection of scriptures. It was an entire spiritual architecture, a language of inner transformation, a symbolic universe in which the sacred was not distant but within, and salvation was not obedience but remembrance. It was a path that did not demand submission but offered sovereignty. It trusted the soul to know its source, and it offered tools, not commandments, for that remembering. One of the most profound losses was the image of Yeshua, not as an atoning sacrifice, but as a revealer, a guide who came to awaken, not to dominate, to mirror the light within the seeker, not to become its sole possessor. In the canonical tradition that came to dominate, Yeshua became a gatekeeper of salvation. In the Gnostic texts, he is something far more intimate, the voice of the divine spark already present in each of us, calling us home. Along with this reimagined Christ came an equally transformative theology of the human being. The soul, in the Gnostic view, was not a creature born in sin, awaiting rescue. It was a fragment of divine light, descended into forgetfulness, trapped in illusion and shadow, but never severed from its origin. The problem, then, was not moral failure, it was ignorance. Not wrongdoing, but unknowing. And in the solution was not punishment or appeasement, but illumination through gnosis. This shift from sin to forgetting, from guilt to blindness, changes everything. It reframes the entire spiritual journey, not as a rescue mission, but as a recovery of what has always been true. And it places the sacred not in the hands of intermediaries, but within the very core of the seeker's being. Also lost was the sacred role of the feminine, not as auxiliary or symbolic, but as central to the cosmic story. In texts like the Gospel of Mary, the Thunder, Perfect Mind, and the Sophia myths of the secret book of John, the feminine appears not as a servant to the masculine, but as a complement, its source, its wisdom. Sophia, whose fall and return echoes through the whole Gnosis cosmology, is not merely an allegory. She is the divine yearning itself. Her exile is the soul's exile. Her redemption is our own. What was buried then was not only a theology, but a different relationship with the sacred. A relationship grounded with intimacy, self-trust, and direct experience. It was a way of living where truth could not be outsourced, where each person was responsible for their own awakening, where the journey inward was not self-indulgence, but spiritual necessity. The triumph of orthodoxy did not come through dialogue, but through decree, through the force of councils, creeds, imperial backing, and eventually through fire. The diversity of early Christianities was flattened into one correct version, and in that flattening, a profound inner richness was lost. The mystical became dangerous. The experiential was labeled unstable, The symbolic was outlawed in favor of literalism, and the wild, unpredictable, intimate language of gnosis was replaced with structure, control, and fear. But nothing true is ever completely destroyed. The spirit of gnosis moved underground. It whispered in myths, poets, and visionaries. It reappeared in the desert fathers and mothers, in the Sufi longing for union, in the alchemist's search for inner gold. It lived in silence, in exile, in questions that refused to die. And now, in this age of spiritual disintegration and renewal, the legacy is returning, not as doctrine, but as imitation. To read these texts, to walk this path, is not simply to recover old writings. It is to reclaim what was taken from you without your knowing. It is to recognize that what you've long felt missing in religion, in culture, in yourself, has a name. And that name is gnosis. Not a system, not a solution, but a flame. A flame that once burned across a diverse, luminous, living spiritual tradition, and that now quietly begins to burn again. And what an amazing a time it is to be alive. And it really is winning the lottery. The texts were always made to come back. Knowledge was always made to resurface, but only when we were ready. It's only when we were ready. But how do we know we're ready? Well, I think that enough time's gone by. I think that we've all been sitting around watching the clock long enough. We all know that, the Savior's not coming. Because we've been waiting, checking our clocks. Well, first off, our clocks are all wrong. Our internal clock is always leading. Our internal, everything's internal. Our internal pull back to ourself, back to our connection with the Most High, back to the divine. But time. Forgetting ourselves. Forgetting who we are. Why we're here. To learn, to grow, but not in the traditional sense of, we become really good students in the 3D. We become masters in the 3D. We get all these doctrines and master degrees and this and that. That doesn't carry on over lifetimes. Yeah, we completely neglect our spiritual self, our spiritual. But why? Well, we're taught not to ask questions. Control. Was that not in the reading today? Control. Don't ask questions, because questions, lead to answers. It's, a lot of the questions asked, they're unified questions. It's questions that we all have, right? But internal truths. It's every time that we see something or hear something that resonates with us, that we believe it to be false because all the systems tell us that it's false. But it's a belief. The knowing is, I know this feels wrong. I know this feels off. I know there's something off about this. But do we question that? Do we question, that's listening to yourself? Do you listen to yourself? Do you follow that? Do you follow that trail? Do you see where that leads? It's, one thought leads to another, to another, to another. It's the thoughts that we explore, though. A lot of times we spend so much time exploring thoughts that where's it go? Loops, dead ends. But that's the systems. That's how the system was designed, to keep us trapped, to keep you stuck, to keep you repetitive, going back and 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 back. Incarnation after incarnation. I don't gotta do the work. I don't gotta save myself because there's a Savior coming. But it's the spiritual journey is a personal journey. can't be contained, can't really be defined. My journey was my journey. There's parts of my journey that are similar with millions of other people. But there's parts of my journey, but not all parts are the same too. We didn't all go into the same situations the same way with the same mindsets. We didn't, be in the same situations with the same mindsets, and we didn't come out of the situations with the same mindsets. We're all different. Different perspectives, different narratives. But I think we can all agree that we're not really free. Right? We can all see that now, right? Our eyes are open to that now, right? Because when the truth, it doesn't matter. If the truth comes out at the wrong time, if it lands on deaf ears, texts come out, texts get unburied. But if it falls upon the wrong eyes, well, it falls upon the wrong eyes. What are the wrong eyes? The ones that see its power and know its power. And, ooh, we're going to suppress that. We've been trying to suppress that for a long time. We can't let this come out. The Vatican, the Smithsonian, the people that are supposed to preserve these artifacts, preserve or suppress. Well, it's really, really confusing what they actually do. Really confusing. Because they say one thing, but if you know what they actually do, it's exact opposite. They're horrible at their job, by definition. Preserving artifacts. Preserving the integrity. Integrity of what? Oh, your lies? Your system of lies? Oh, yeah. It's a lot of work for them to cover it all up. It's a lot of work. Especially, all these people, digging up stuff in their own yards. They can't be everywhere. And with the internet now, information can get out there quick. That's why they waged the war against the internet. But questions. Question everything. That's the theme, though, is it not? Question everything. Question everyone. That's how you set yourself free. Curiosity may have killed the cat, but it freed the slave. You got to free yourself. There's no savior coming. Hey, you want to find a savior? Go look in the mirror. There's your savior. If you can't see the savior yet, well, you still have a lot of work to do. Just look in that mirror until you see it. It's there. Behind all those layers, all those veils of deceit that were placed over you, that you placed over yourself, it's there. I know it is. I looked in the mirror and I found it. I don't stand on beliefs, I stand on knowings. What I speak on knowing, not beliefs. I don't care about your belief systems. I don't care about coddling to your fragile belief systems. I stand on truth. I stand on knowing. And I hope you do as well. But yeah, how you guys doing this rising? You know what? Speaking of, real information and knowledge and shit, right? You know how, like, in, I kind of want to get an old school TV just for, in high school, how the teachers used to come in, or normally substitute teachers. When you have the substitute teacher, they roll in the TV on the cart, you know what I mean? You're like, oh, everyone gets all excited, like, yeah, we're having a movie day, right? Well, I just have tons of, videos that I found, that I have saved, that, it's, the videos I'm going to show you, there's more truths, there's more real facts in these videos I'm going to show you than you've acquired in all of your years of indoctrination through the school systems. Because they don't teach real facts. They don't teach real history. They teach propaganda, indoctrination. But you want some real facts? What's funny too is I hesitate on posting some of these things, on resharing them, on especially ones that I know I want to show you guys, because it has a funny way of disappearing. As soon as I share it, it has a funny way of, as soon as I research, it comes into my existence, and then I share it. It just has a funny way of going away. But this is like another way of me kind of documenting it, so the videos still exist. It's just like, it's like me, I'm bearing scrolls. I'm bearing scrolls in time. That's a way of looking at it, though. That's actually, I never broke that down, but in comparison, that's what I'm doing with this. I'm reestablishing the fact of you can't always get rid of it. You can't always. And some of it is, it's truths that, people that are still alive today, lies that people are still covering up today, that wish that this stuff didn't exist. But it does. It didn't go away. It's still existence. And I'm going to share some of that, just to ensure that it still doesn't go away. All right. What are we going to start with? Where? There's really no order. These are just ones that I've saved for myself because it was useful information that I'm like, other people should know this. And so here I am about to share it to other people so that you do know it. Some of it, a lot of it goes in with each other. Other of it is just random. But all of it is important. All of it is true. All of it is stuff that more people should know about. I got a lot saved. Where do I want to start? Let's just start at the top, right?
Now, how many of you know about the object in Greenland?
Oh, that's an interesting one. All right. So this gets into Greenland. So just like when we're healing, right? When things trigger us, and there's always deeper levels of things. Like there's always the initial response reaction kind of level, but there's always deeper meanings and levels of everything, right? And so people are aware of what's happening in Greenland, right? People are aware how, the U.S. is trying to, in some sense, understandable, yes, but there's more levels to everything, right? There's more levels to everything. And this gets into something that's coming up right now.
Now, how many of you know about the object in Greenland? A couple of you, okay. Well, for those of you that don't know, there is a spacecraft that has melted out of the ice in Greenland. As you know, the North Pole has melted completely. You can go from London to Moscow or to Russia by going over the North Pole now. All the ice cap is gone. The last place that has ice on it was Greenland. Greenland had a 18,000-foot ice cap on it. Well, the spacecraft that is anchored in the center of Greenland created the last ice age 50,000 years ago. It's a weather machine. It's 55 miles wide, 300 miles long, and 2 miles high. The people that lived in it were called the Mois. If you draw a straight line from the spacecraft to the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C., through the Yucatan Peninsula, Great Pyramid, and Mitsubishi, it ends up on Easter Island where the Mois have been dug out of the dirt. The heads on Easter Island, well, 2 years ago, they finally went ahead and they excavated, and they're all 65 to 85 foot people, full body carvings. And these were the people that lived in the spacecraft that was uncovered that's melting out of the ice in Greenland. So when you think we've been alone, these people have been up there for 50,000 years. The spacecraft is still active after 50,000 years. It has a 200-mile dampening field where no electrons can flow into it. In 1947, a B-52 bomber flew into that pattern, into the dampening field, when trying to fly between Maine and London. As a result of that, they lost power and crashed in Greenland. As they sent in rescue B-52 bombers to rescue them, they hit that same dampening field, but they veered off. They just ricocheted off of it. By testing, trying to get to these guys, they were able to bring a circumference and find out that there was an object 200 miles to the center of this field. On the southwest corner of Greenland, there is a small community. It's the only community on the island of Greenland. That community is a military post, CIA, that uses a compressed air generator to operate diesel engines to run a Caterpillar to run back and forth to 200 miles from the base to the object in Greenland. A lot of our technology comes from the reverse engineering out of the spacecraft. It is still functional and is still in operation. So it's pretty important what this thing is. All the nations worldwide are up there with the United Nations, and they're all acting, working together.
So a lot of interesting stuff in there. You'll never hear it on the media. You know what I mean? You'll never hear it on the media talking about that. Well, for good reason. For good reason. What's interesting too. It's interesting that that someone made a comment I saw talking about cabal. People that don't really understand what Trump's doing. When Trump talks about like the deep state and stuff like that. If anyone's ever seen the shows like what was it, Blacklisted? That's a really good one. Blacklisted. Then there's like Prison Break, and there's all sorts of TV shows like that. That if you know those shows, then you already know who Trump's actually going to war with, who Trump's going to war against, right? So there's so many different levels of things that are going on that most people, first off, they only are aware of the surface level. They have complete ignorance of any true real facts of what's actually really going on. And so, but they only react off of the surface level. Because it's no deeper understanding, it's no deeper knowledge, it is none. Because people, they just take the information they're led, and they shut up and they go with it. And they label it as truth and as facts, as, well, because my government told me this, so it must be true. It's funny, as people, laugh about the internet. Well, if it's on the internet, then it must be true. There's more truth on the internet than you'll ever get in any history book, than you'll ever get in school. There's more truth in the internet than ever taught in any school, any college. They don't teach truths. They teach indoctrination. They teach propaganda. That's what they teach. That's what they teach. But what else is going on in that? Easter Isle goes into the just the heads being revealed. Well, it's just more proof of the mud floods that happened. Just like all these buildings and all these cities. You know what I mean? You look at them and it's half windows. Like, who builds a window halfway into the ground? Nobody. No architect does that. It doesn't. They don't. First off, we didn't build those buildings, because if we did, we could duplicate them, and we can't. We found them, already destroyed by the mud flood, already buried. And some of the buildings we excavated, some of them we cleaned up, and then we just took over it. We founded them. They weren't built. If someone really built it, they could duplicate it. And we couldn't. We haven't been able to. History has proven that. So question everything. Question everything you've been taught. I think that's all I wanted to get into on that one. We'll go on to the next one.
Object in Greenland.
Oh. Oh, this is interesting.
Yes. About it.
So my understanding of this video is this is an interview of a doctor that he did while locked up. Dr. Robert Young speaks out from behind bars. And this goes into the harmful nature of the cellular towers. It's sad. Well, I'll just shut up. I'll play the video and I'll get into it after.
And I put my life on the line. I'm not saying this in the comfort of my home. I'm not saying this, in the comfort of my lab or anything. I'm saying this out of survival and concern for the human race, for my family. Everybody needs the antidote to protect them against a phantom virus that doesn't even exist. All of the symptoms are caused by radiation poisoning delivered by a network of 4G, 5G technology. the lethal dose is 42 gigahertz and up. It takes 100% of the people out. They can do it gradually. They can say it incubates for 7 to 14 days. That's not true. It incubates depending on if they just keep increasing the frequency gradually. And what happens is it throws the body into pathological blood coagulation, causes excess acidity, causes reverse polarity. The symptoms, of encephalitis, brain inflammation, it's one of the major causes of death, is caused by radiation poisoning. Listen to me. This is not a virus. This is direct assault on the human body from electromagnetic fields that are oscillating in the gigahertz range, and they can control that to make it look like, there's an incubation period, or they can make it look like, you've been transfected by somebody who's been exposed. This is all lies. All lies. Everyone's at risk that owns a cell phone. Everyone is at risk who has a wireless. Everyone is at risk if they don't have the antidote to disarm the technology. That's why I was all over this. This is why I published. I did it at the risk of my own life. I'm in jail because I expressed this about this, and I put my life on the line.
So that's a doctor talking about the harmful dangers of radiation and stuff, right? And we're well aware of the problems of radiation, right? That's why when we go to get x-rays, which is radiation, what do? They put a lead vest over us, right? Well, if they really cared about our health, then we would probably have lead-based paint, right? Because that would stop radiation from coming into our house. But what if those crazy conspiracy theorists that hold on to that crazy belief that they had you get rid of your lead paint out of your house and stop using the lead paint because kids were eating it. They were chipping off the paint and they were eating it. But the crazy conspiracy theorists are going to have you believe that they outlawed lead in the paint so that they could. But one, it's harmful to you. But those crazy people also believe that it can help them see. It's the way that they use things like the router and everything like that, all the Wi-Fi, along with all the 5G towers. And it kind of gives them they can see what's going on. They can see through everything. They can see what's going on because of the pulses that it puts out, right? But it's harmful. It's harmful frequencies. It's harmful to us. It's harmful to us. And so it's hard. I see Trump, sitting in the White House talking about it's a good thing, excited for a 6G, and it's like, oh man, you must not know. You think it's a good thing. He thinks we're just getting better, connections in this and that. It's, these other crazy conspiracy theories, man. These crazy motherfuckers, they even broke into some of these towers expecting to find it to say stuff like COVID-19 in it, right? Well, of course it wouldn't say that in there. Oh, no, only a fool would think that it would actually say that. Or only a fool would believe that it actually says it inside of these fucking towers. Only a fool would believe that. Only a fool would believe that it was systematically designed. Only a fool would believe that it was done in a way to get you to give up your rights and your freedoms and to live in fear. Only a fool would believe that. Yeah, and you guys aren't fools. You believe everything the government tells you. And yet those crazy conspiracy theories, lies, blasphemy. Yeah, we don't listen to those crazy people. Oh no. Crazies. Huh. What do we got next? Well, we got a little bit of everything. What do we got next?
If you become Muslim, you are like us. You are one of us. If you do not become Muslim, then you will allow us to spread the da'wah through your land. And you will allow us to establish the adl and insaf of the sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When there is something that blocks you, the sword opens the way. If you don't, we will not force you to become Muslim, but you will pay the jizya. What we will not tolerate is the dhulm
of any other laws other than the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being implemented in the dunya. And today, wallahi, we're afraid to say this. Today, we're afraid to say it. I know there's brothers that are going to talk to me after this. Why do you say that? It's the truth. The haqq of Sharia is that it's implemented in the whole world. It is what it is. That's what we believe. He said, if not, then I have brought a people with me that love death fi sabilillah, in the path of Allah, like you love your wine, your alcohol, your drink, or you love your life of dunya. The future is ours.
I hope you heard those words. He said that
nightmare.
I hope that he said first off, he says that we brought people that love death, just like you love your alcohol and everything else. You understand the meaning of that? And then he also said that they pretty much what it breaks down to is we go into other countries. They either accept our law, our Sharia law. They either accept that, or what they don't accept, the sword fixes. That's what he said. And so one important thing to be aware of is the fight that's being fought all around the world right now against the Muslim community, which, but you look at I've seen a lot of city council meetings. One of them actually, so when I was in Oklahoma, the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, Tallahena, Oklahoma, one stoplight town, middle of fucking nowhere. Right on the Arkansas border, close to that, right? I was seeing on TV, it caught my attention. It was Broken Arrow. And Broken Arrow was one of the closest towns that actually had any nightlife. And it was a couple hours away from where I was, but it was still like a nothing town. But at least there was something, right? We were in the middle of nowhere. And when we had a day off, we wanted to go have some drinks and go see some women and do, you know what I mean? And we're, middle of nowhere. We wanted to go out. And Broken Arrow was one of the places that we went, right? But Broken Arrow had a city council meeting, and they denied a mosque from being built. But it's something interesting to pay attention to too is, are they places of worship? Because if you look at what's in Texas, the mosque that went up in Texas, that looks more like a compound. And it looks more like a military institution. There's a big difference between opening your doors and being welcoming and opening to other people into your country. It's completely different to shift your country and to turn your country into something else to appease other people. This is our country, our laws. These are the certain laws that we abide by. We're a Christian nation, are we not? Christian nations, Zionism is outlawed in every Christian nation. But so isn't Sharia law in a Christian nation. Those are certain rules, certain laws that you have to adhere by. Praise your God, but to have a military compound to allow you to do that, or even our Christian churches do not have military compounds. But what does he say? The sword will fix it. But also that, we either convert or we pay them dues, is with their belief. But even Christians think, oh, my dues are paid. Jesus paid my dues. Well, first off, that excuse doesn't count either. He didn't, what, you're here to save yourself. That's the message he tried to show you. That got suppressed and blocked and ignored. But it's coming back through Christ consciousness, which is a level of ascension, which is what he was trying to express. He was not the Christ, he was a Christ, an embodiment of a consciousness. That's the big misconception. Not the, a. But we're a Christian nation, are we not? Christian nations never used to lend money for interest rates. Didn't exist in a Christian nation. Didn't exist. It was outlawed. Illegal. And now we celebrate getting a low 30% rate. Yay, good job, guys! We're winning. We're so sophisticated with our technology and educations and degrees. We're doing so well. As first world countries, so well. All right, what do we got next? Of course, this would tie right into that too.
Islam says any woman applies perfume. Psst, 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 psst. And she walks and men find her scent, her perfume fragrance. She is a zaniya. She has committed fornication. Whoa. Sheikh, I smell.
Whoa, women. Hey, you United States women, you U.S. women, you got to calm it down. You need to calm down. Out here committing adultery by wearing perfume. You got to calm it down. Simmer down now. Stop doing that. You're provoking the men to want to come out here and grape you. You better stop that. Out here smelling all delicious and shit. You better stop that. You asked for it. You better stop that. The Sharia law. We should be welcoming and opening acceptance of everyone.
The United States pulls the strings of the presidency.
This is a good one.
Your Majesty, you're not telling me that the Jewish lobby in the United States pulls the strings of the presidency.
Not entirely, but I think even a little too much, even for Israel interests.
You think the Jewish lobby in the United States is too powerful for the interests of Israel?
I think so. Sometimes they are disserving the interests of Israel because they're pushing around too many people.
How do you mean pushing around?
Well, pressuring. They have many means at their disposal. They are putting up pressure on many, many people. And at the end, I don't think that it will even help Israel.
Why, if this is true, why would the President of the United States pay attention to that lobby?
They are strong.
Strong in what sense?
They are controlling many things.
Controlling what?
Newspapers, medias,
Your Majesty.
banks, finances, and I'm going to stop there.
Well, now wait just a second. You really do believe that the Jewish community in the United States is that powerful? They make the media reflect their view of foreign policy?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They do not report? We do not report honestly?
Don't mix things, please. I don't say the media. I'll say in the media they have people. Not the entire media. Some newspapers will only reflect their views, yes.
Really, Your Majesty, you're not telling me that the Jewish lobby in the United States...
So my understanding is that was the last Shah that they had in Iran. Which, you know, it's funny because what they do with, you know, with geography, right? You know, wars, but then they rename places. You know, Iran is modern day Persia, right? It's the Persian Empire, right? You know, but it's interesting too, is Saudi Arabia. You know, people think, you know, Saudi Arabia, that's a name. That, like, you know, that'd be calling it the United States Trump, like United States of Trump or something. You know, it's a name, it's a family name. You know, Saudi Arabia, it's not a country name, it's a family name. You know, but what's interesting too, what goes through my mind is, you know, this man spoke up against Zionism, right? Spoke up against Zionism and stuff, right? But he was, you know, he was exiled out of his own country, right? And then took refuge, or was he taken out? I don't remember. But his son is coming into the news now, because his son is the ones that they're trying to overpower Iran, and they're trying to put his son into power in Iran. But his son is out here supporting Zionism. His son is out here talking about it. And you know, this son, he's been out of that country for what? Four decades or something like that, right? But you listen to how this man speaks, and then you listen to how his son speaks. And it's quite obvious who the puppet is. It's quite obvious who they would want. The same people that this man's speaking out against, the same people that have bought and paid for his son and sold him a pipe dream that you're going to run this place. You just have to do our bidding, and we'll put you back into power. That's how it all plays out. That's how they're trying to have it play out. Open your eyes, see what's going on. Pay attention. But know the past. The best way to understand what's happening today is to truly understand what happened in the past. And to understand what happened in the past, you Interesting, puzzle time. But to understand the past, to put all the puzzle pieces together, to fully understand it, but not even just to understand it, you need to have that information and put it together on a surface level. And then once you get on a surface level, then you can start diving deeper. But most people don't even have everything put together on a surface level, much less seeing the deeper meanings and roots of everything. You know, they just take things for as they are on the surface level. And they don't even understand that. And they get all worked up in their emotions. And, you know, it's the last thing the U.S. should be doing is getting into any war. For anyone. No one. It's anything that we get into right now, it's going to be systematically get us drawn into something to distract us. Because why? Because we're focusing on ourselves, which is what we're supposed to be doing. You know, the war on drugs, I can get that. I can understand that. I can get behind that. Because it's the understanding of, well, the life that I lived. You know, I saw firsthand, but I know firsthand. I know, not just beliefs. I know firsthand. I know corrupt-ass motherfuckers like, you know, people say, oh, a great president, Bill Clinton. No, that great president that allowed the CIA to drop smuggling drugs into Mena, Arkansas. That great president that allowed them to, you know, get rid of the 2 little boys. That great president. That great guy. I'm aware of these acts, of these great men. They're not so great. They're great about being bad. They've been great about not getting caught. So, you know, I talk about how they alter facts, right? And how they change history and this and that. But it's like, you know, people wonder, it's like, how could they do it? How could they get away with it? They're doing it right now. They're doing this to this day. They're doing it as we speak right now. It still continues to today. They're slowly erasing history and rewriting it. Rewriting the narrative. Not the truth, the narrative that they want remembered. And that's leading into this next part that we're going to show.
From years of my own research and the research of others, that proofs of the Holocaust are few. Literally, all there is are the eyewitness testimonies and post-war confessions. There is no picture, plan, or wartime document dealing with homicidal gas chambers or a plan to exterminate the Jews. It was the British who obtained, by torture, the confession of Rudolf Höss, commandant of Auschwitz, before turning him over to the Soviets and Poles. This has been confirmed in a book published in 1983 titled Legions of Death, which contains the recollections of British Sergeant Bernard Clark, who brags about having tortured Höss to get a confession out of him and of threatening his family. It was here that Höss was hanged. We can't use the excuse that the Nazis destroyed all the evidence, because after we had broken the German code, we were able to intercept their secret transmissions, including those that came from Auschwitz. The key to understanding the Holocaust story is understanding the true nature of the things passed off as proofs. Everything that is used as evidence of the Holocaust also can be said to have a perfectly normal explanation. For example, these exhibits are said to be the material proofs of exterminations. There's the piles of human hair. But what does that prove? It's acknowledged that each inmate had his or her head shaved because of the lice problem. That's not denied, so why wouldn't there be piles of human hair? What about the piles of shoes and clothing? Is that a proof? It's a fact that the prisoners were issued a uniform upon arrival, including shoes, So why wouldn't there be piles of inmates' shoes and clothing? It doesn't prove anybody was killed. What about the canisters of gas? No one denies that Zyklon B was used to disinfect clothes and also buildings. Zyklon B was one of the premier pest control agents in Europe at that time. It was present in most of the concentration camps, including those that are not said to have had homicidal gas chambers in them. The typhus epidemic that spread throughout Europe during the war and also spread through the camps called for stringent lice control procedures. So what other proofs are offered? Well, there's the usual pictures of sick inmates, which proves the groundbreaking thesis that people got sick in the camp. Once again, I'll add that nobody denies the typhus epidemic, which resulted in many deaths. From years of my own research and the
The original diary manuscript was forensically examined by the German State Forensic Bureau, the Bundeskriminalamt. Their analysis determined that significant portions of the work were written with a ballpoint pen. Since ballpoint pens were not available to everyone before 1951, portions of the work were added well after the war. Handwriting experts determined after closer examination of the originals that all of the writing in the diary was by the same hand, and the BKA determined that none of the diary handwriting matched known examples of Anne's real handwriting. The true author of the diary was Jewish novelist Meir Levine, who demanded and was awarded $50,000 in payments for his work in a court action against Anne's father, Otto Frank. The truth about the Anne Frank diary was first exposed in 1959 by the Swedish journal Fria Ord. It established that the Jewish novelist Meir Levine had written the dialogue of the diary and was demanding payment for his work in a court action against Otto Frank. An extract from the Swedish articles appeared in the American Economic Council letter, April 15, 1959, as follows. History has many examples of myths that live a longer and richer life than truth, and may become more effective than truth. The Western world has for some years been made aware of a Jewish girl through the medium of what purports to be her personally written story, Anne Frank's diary. Any informed literary inspection of this book would have shown it to have been impossible as the work of a teenager. A noteworthy decision of the New York State Supreme Court confirms this point of view, in that the well-known American Jewish writer, Meir Levine, has been awarded $50,000 to be paid him by the father of Anne Frank as an honorarium for Levine's work on the Anne Frank diary. Evidence compiled by Dr. Robert Farrison of France establishes that the famous diary is a literary hoax. After doing substantial research, Professor Farrison stated, "The truth obliged me to say that the diary of Anne Frank is only a simple literary fraud." The original diary manuscript was forensically examined by the German State.
Because it turns out the prison camp was actually more like a holiday camp. This is the swimming pool?
Yep, that's the one.
Well, there's no way I'd escape.
No, me neither. There was a proper hockey rink right here.
What?
Well, yeah, there was a huge sports field right behind those trees. And during the winter, they've built a huge hockey rink.
So they had a sports pitch, a swimming pool.
Library,
Library?
theater,
What?
theater. Are you quite sure that wasn't people trying to tunnel in? Yeah.
Because it turns out the prison camp.
So you have, all the false facts about the extermination camps. All of them, proven. Any true investigation into it, proven it false. But all those suppressed, that's against our narrative. We don't like that narrative. It's the truth. It doesn't sit right with us because it's the truth and it points out our wrongs. So we don't like that. So we're going to suppress that. We're not going to tell that story. Let's tell a different story. Let's tell a different story where we're the victims. Let's tell a different story where we're just the victims, innocent bystanders. And let's tell a story where we were horribly treated, mistreated. Let's tell that narrative. Yeah, that serves our agenda best. Better than, yeah. Let's just serve that up. Let's serve that up. That's the story we're gonna tell. And we're going to stick with it. We're going to stick with it. That's a good one. People are going to feel bad for us. We're going to play on their sympathy. And we're going to play that card over and over and over and over. And we're going to beat a dead horse over the dead bodies that don't exist. Some do, yes, but not to the extent and not for the reasons. Victims, you know, it's victims are real, but the situations is so much, there's so much falsehoods, there's so much unknown. You know, but eyewitness counts. Listen to the eyewitness counts. Anne Frank's diary. There was a lawsuit over it because it was composed by someone else, but written with a pen that didn't exist in the time. You know, do I have to tell you how to put those facts together? Because I can't lay it out any more clear than that. If you can't connect those dots, then, you know, your big brain, I don't think you have a big brain. I think you got a small brain, and that's even being generous. You know, but how do they cover up the lies? How do they change the narrative? How do they change the history? How do they change the facts? They start while it's happening. Well, first off, they hide it as much as they can. And but even when caught red-handed, caught in the act, they pull a Shaggy. It wasn't me. You know, I got caught with my dick in him. Wasn't me. Nope, that ain't my dick. Nope. Who put my dick in her? I had nothing to do with this. Nope, it wasn't me. Nope. All I said was, let's just play an innocent game of just the tip. Then all of a sudden, I'm a victim. It was the whole thing. I had no choice. No, I didn't sign up for it.
When the history books write this, they don't write about the victims of Gaza, right? The next generation of young people won't remember October 7th in the same way. That's true in Israel and in America and broadly in the world. And we need to make sure two things. One, it's not that we don't forget. We need to make sure that the story is told properly so that when the history books write this, they don't write about the victims of Gaza, right? They can't. The history, and it's. I should be a little more precise. There were victims in Gaza, right? It's true. There are civilian casualties in every war that's ever been fought, but the victims were the people of the nation-state of Israel. The aggressor was the Iranian regime in the proxy of Hamas, and we need to make sure that the history books reflect that, and that requires each of us every day to talk about it in real time with our children, with our grandchildren, about it in a way that is serious and thoughtful and complete and moral.
You know,
so that when the history books write that,
you know, the way that man was speaking, you know, the way that history books write it, we need to make sure that we write it in a way that's favorable to us. The way that this man is speaking, well, shit, he sounds like, you know, he's from Israel. The way that he's speaking, he seems like he embodies the state of Israel. But who is he? Oh, that's right. That's our former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. Oh, that's ours, the United States. Oh, that's right. Oh, so it's our job. It's our obligation as good United States Christians. United States Christians. Yeah, it's our job. It's our obligation as great American Christians to co-sign the falsehoods, to co-sign the lies, to co-sign the murder, to co-sign it, and to make sure that history remembers it properly. It is our duty. It is our obligation to protect Israel at all costs. How about we protect the truth at all costs? In unrelated news, do we still got hanging trees? We still got those? Those still exist? Anyone checked on them? They haven't gotten any use in a long time. Maybe that's why we find ourselves in the times that we are in right now. Traitors to your nation, traitors to religion. A traitor is a traitor is a traitor is a traitor is a traitor.
Israeli figures. I've been in the government too long. Let me preface these remarks with I never, ever believe Israeli figures. I've been in the government too long to know that the Israelis are patent liars. In their intelligence community, in their propaganda community, certainly, and in their leadership, they are inveterate liars. Let me say that again. They are liars. So you can't believe anything that comes out of Jerusalem. It's all propaganda. Let me preface these remarks with that.
Well, we need to make sure. We need to make sure that our greatest ally is remembered the proper way. We, United States Americans and Christians, we need to make sure that Israel is only portrayed in the greatest light, that everything done in the dark shall never come to the light. So be it. God wills it. I'm kind of surprised I haven't been cut off yet. I'm not going to lie. But I'm going to keep going with it till I do.
Are very, very selfish. They care not how many Estonians, Latvians, Finns, Poles, Yugoslavs, or Greeks get murdered or mistreated as displaced persons, as long as the Jews get special treatment. Yet when they have power, physical, financial, or political, neither Adolf Hitler nor Joseph Stalin has anything on them for cruelty or mistreatment to the underdog. The Jews have no sense of proportion, nor do they have any judgment on world affairs. President Truman, 21st July, 1947, diary entry.
Oh, I got another one from a president too. Let's play those ones back to back. So that was Truman, and then I have one from Nixon too. I'm gonna go out of order here. Where did that one go? Where's the Nixon one? Oh, here we go. Oh, there you don't get
in this country. Their belief is that as being for Israel first, that does not mean you're putting America second. An American president, however, has to approach it in a different way, in my opinion. He's got always to think first of what is best for America. An American president must make a decision that does not, in effect, give the Israelis a blank check. And one example of that is a decision that I made. I decided early on in our administration that we were going to seek good relations with Egypt and others of Israel's neighbors. Many of my Israeli friends didn't like that because they wanted a special relationship with Israel and Israel only. Let me explain something about what is called the Jewish lobby.
You know, there's not much that I agree with or even like about Nixon. You know, the war on drugs that Trump is fighting right now. That's the war that Nixon should have fought. You know, the war on drugs. If we want to fight the war on drugs, we should have been fighting the war on ourselves. You know, you want to fight the war on drugs, get rid of the CIA. You want to fight the war on drugs, and get rid of a lot of them that way. You stop a lot of them from coming in that way. We think the problem's external. We think the problem's outside. It's not even at your front door. It's sitting on your fucking couch, motherfuckers. If you don't realize that, then you know it's been in our country for way too long. You know, but it's funny. You know what I'm being reminded of? So we used to go around and we used to jack car systems out of cars, right? But our dumbasses, we would get people that we didn't really like anyways. But then we'd be out, in the streets, and we'd hear our car alarms go off, and then we'd see those kids like go running after them, thinking that they're gonna catch the thieves, and we go running along with them. It's like, yeah, let's go catch those thieves that are getting all the systems. Let's go get those bad guys. Let's go get them. Well, we were the bad guys. We did it. You know what I mean? We already sold it. But that's, unfortunately, I did that. you know. But it's, you know, the war on drugs. The war on drugs, it's an inside job. Oh, we're going to catch all the bad guys. You know what bad guys they catch? You know what bad guys they parade around? Is the ones that don't play along. It's the ones that don't pay them their dues. It's the ones that are working outside their establishment. Those are the ones they go after. Those are the ones they target. Come on, put on your thinking cap. Use your big brain. That's how it works. They don't actually fight drugs. They fight the ones that don't pay, that don't make their pockets fatter. Those are the ones they go after. Those are the bad guys. But the ones that make them richer, the ones that scratch their back, they ain't that bad. They're not that bad. They're good people, actually. They're great people. Family loving, community loves them. They're great people.
Meta from living out the Zionist dream. I have been at Meta for almost 9 years. We banned content claiming Zionists run the world or control living out the Zionist dream. I have been at Meta for almost 9 years. We banned content claiming Zionists run the world or control the media. I'm living out the Zionist dream. I have been at
Meta. Yeah, those people. You know, Zuckerberg. Yeah, that guy. You know, wants to play the victim card. Oh, they forced me to suppress the information. Oh, they forced me to use my fact checkers. They forced me. I was forced to. I'm innocent. I made so much money off it. I'm so rich and so popular and famous. I made so much, but I'm a victim. Oh, no consequences for my actions. I was forced upon it. I had no choice. I had to, because the big bad government came and they puffed and they blew their wind and I got scared. Yeah, right. I'm gonna play that card, but victim, willing, participant. Anyone seen The Hanging Tree?
First of all, there was but the two cases that really got us, first of all, there was a false flag attack in London in 1994, where a car bomb exploded outside the Israeli embassy in the centre of London.
Now, I remember this vaguely. This is, we're talking 14 years ago.
It's a long time
But
ago.
it was huge at the time. I mean, it was a huge worldwide story.
Yeah. In fact, there'd been an earlier attack against some Jewish interests section in Buenos Aires earlier that year as well. Similar sort of MO, modus operandi, with a car bomb driven and parked outside that exploded. Very minor injuries, that was all. Nobody was killed. And it was a very sophisticated device. It appeared to eat all the forensics. Now, this is very, very rare. Even the IRA, which is a very sophisticated terrorist organisation, could not make bombs that effective. So it looked like a, sort of fairly technical person had put that together. But what emerged from that, the senior MI5 officer who was in charge of the investigation into it and had seen all the evidence but also all the intelligence, which isn't necessarily admissible in court, wrote his formal assessment at the end of the case. And he said he reckoned that Mossad, the Israeli external intelligence agency, had bombed their own embassy. A sort of controlled explosion outside the embassy. And as I said, that was a senior MI5 officer. That was his formal verdict. If you read that on the internet now, you would say that sounds like some mad conspiracy theory. But it wasn't. This was the official position of MI5. And he said that they did it for two reasons. One, they were always hassling MI5 for increased security around their embassy and other interests in London. Because, of course, London had a reputation of giving safe haven to Arab dissidents from around the world at that point. And MI5 kept saying, well, there's no reason to increase the threat assessment. You don't need extra protection. So letting off a controlled explosion outside, of course, they immediately got what they wanted there. But crucially, 2 innocent Palestinians were arrested, charged and convicted of conspiracy to cause that attack. And They were very active in a Palestinian support network in London, political campaigning for the people on the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And they were gaining some traction in the media. They were getting quite a lot of support. So by arresting these people and framing them for an attack and sticking them in prison, the whole network just shattered and hasn't got back on its feet to this day. So that would be a clear political advantage.
Wow.
The two cases that really got us.
Hold up. So, MI5. It was MI5's belief. Not my belief. Not the internet's belief. This is coming from a MI5 agent. It was MI5's belief that, you know, that special group of God's chosen people created a false flag attack on themselves to get what they wanted. What kind of crazy-ass motherfuckers would do something like that? Well, if they did it once, do you think it was their first time? Were there any before that? And if they did it once, do you think it will be their last? Do you think they didn't do it again? If they did it once, and it was, what did she say, so sophisticated? Sophisticated. Oh, well, they probably have done it more than once then, huh? Oh, they've probably gotten pretty good about doing it, huh? Oh, they probably got really good about not getting caught either, huh? Or they just got really good at suppressing all the times that they did get caught. They started silencing everyone that spoke up about catching them. What's more plausible? Ponder me that.
Thankful to all of you that have been here, but there's somebody that I never get to be with in an event like this, my beloved wife, Carolyn. So I want you to stand, Carolyn. Carolyn is totally selfless. And when I married her, I said, I have to be honest. There's another woman in my life. She said, what? I said, Israel. I love her so much. I have to be with her a lot. She said, honey, I will let you do that. But if she ever calls me on the phone, you are dead. We are going to train 100,000 Christian ambassadors to be ambassadors in their own country for the state of Israel, to defend Israel's brand and to combat anti-Semitism. Now, the beautiful part about this is we're partnering with Blackboard. Blackboard is the largest platform in the world, serving Harvard, Yale, all the major universities. The vice president of Blackboard is here. It's a $2.3 billion company. Would you stand, please? Would you give him a hand? Using adaptive learning technology. So we'll train these wonderful Christian evangelicals so that they can fulfill what I am doing for the state of Israel. Secondly, we're creating FAWS-I, an online academy to train tens of millions of evangelicals. The power of the evangelical muscle is enormous. It represents almost 1 billion people. But no one ever harnessed it. And we're doing that here. We're creating the first evangelical think tank, the first evangelical research institute, so the state of Israel will know who they are and how they can contribute to the state of Israel. We're, of course, a social network campus and much more. So that's exciting for us. The second thing I want to announce is at our Friends of Zion Museum, we are going to build the Donald Trump exhibition. No president in American history has done more for the state of Israel than Donald Trump. The media center is indeed a gift to Israel. You can use it Ambassador Friedman. You can use it for any event you want for the foreign ministry, etc. Because we are doing this all for Israel. It's all about Israel. He who defines the terms controls the debate. And we've allowed in the past the enemies of Israel to define the terms. But not anymore. The 21st century wars are first media wars. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. And anybody that doesn't understand that they're media wars is delusional. I talked to a Joint Chief of Staff and I said to him, help me understand, how do wars begin and end? He whispered in my ear and said, you don't have a recorder on? I said, no. He said, the media decides when they start, the media decides when they end. Most people don't understand the power of the media. Marvelous opportunities of a lifetime are right now. Shimon Peres was our first chairman. And people ask me why. You know, Shimon Peres, wasn't he to the left and you're to the right? I said, let me tell you something. I love that man. I love that man because I knew his mind and his heart. But we evangelicals are not to the right. We're not to the left. We're for the bird. The bird is Israel. We're for all of it. We're for all of it. And we're the ones that got President Trump elected, and we'll do it again. And now you have an evangelical vice president, evangelical secretary of state. You have evangelical advisors. One of them has just flown in here from the White House with the president. That's on our team. This is an astonishing day. I'm so thankful to all of you.
You know, what was that company's name that they're bragging about installing into all of our greatest universities? Blackboard, blackballed, blackmail. Really fitting for who it is, who they're working with, who they're siding with. Really fitting. You know, that's, you know, blackmail. Is that what they thrive on? You know, all that information they gather. You know, but also what the information they gather, what do they use it for as well, though? Incriminating evidence to blackmail people so that they suppress true information, they suppress proper information, and they just co-sign false narratives. What energy I was getting off of this guy is this guy would make you want to feel like every day I should just, as a good American citizen, as a great Christian, evangelical Christian, American citizen, I should wake up every day and my very first thought should not be to the Most High to give thanks for the gift of another day. My very first thought should be, what sacrifices can I make today for the state of Israel? What sacrifices would you ask of me, oh my God, would you have me make today for the great state of Israel? Because every day I wake up and I just ask, how else could I deprive myself? How else could I give what I do not have to those that have more? How else could I help those that harm others? How else, Lord? How else may I help them? Yeah. That's my thought every day. Is it yours too? Oh, fuck.
We now turn to draft resolution 3, elimination of all forms of racial discrimination. A roll call vote has been requested on this draft resolution.
Abstention, Greece.
Abstention,
Grenada.
Yes.
Yes, Guatemala.
Abstention.
Abstention, Guinea.
Yes.
Yes, Guinea-Bissau.
Yes.
Yes, Guyana.
Yes.
Yes, Haiti. No, Honduras.
No.
No, Hungary.
Yes.
Yes, Iceland.
No.
No, India.
Yes.
Yes, Indonesia.
Yes.
Yes, Iran.
Oui.
Yes, Iraq.
Yes.
Yes, Ireland.
No.
No, Israel.
No.
No, Italy.
No.
No, Ivory Coast.
No.
No, Jamaica. Abstention. Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Yes. Yes, United Arab Emirates.
You know, what was that? That was on November 10th of 1975. You know, at the UN, they had a vote. They had to vote whether or not they should unclassify Zionism as a form of racism. And so many people would have you believe that, you know, that all those that voted yes are the bad guys. I'm not one of those people. I'm one of the people that thinks that all those that said yes were true patriots that stood up for what's right. All those that stood up against it. You know, it's hard to... People are quick to associate Zionism with Israel. It's not all of Israel. It's the Zionist agenda. It's the Zionist mentality. It's the Zionism. That's the true threat. That's the true problem. You know, but it's anti-Semitic. How about you just have a fucked up way of doing things? And we don't agree with it. It doesn't align with us. You're fucked up. How about that? You ever think about that? You know, it's funny. God will bless those that blessed us. Well, why doesn't God bless you? Oh, that's right. Praising false gods. Oh, you must have stopped that, right? Because you must have learned your lesson, and so you stopped doing that. In which case, you must have came back into God's grace, and so God must bless you, right? Oh, that's not happening. Oh, so you must demand and require other people to bless you because you can't bless yourself. Oh, right. Got it.
Complex that just mysteriously building 7 into rubble in North Miami. That was in Bal Harbor. That happened on the same night that John McAfee died. And it's believed that he had an apartment or information stored in this one little apartment in Bal Harbor. When that apartment building collapsed, they didn't let American response teams or like emergency teams do all the digging. Jake, I'm not even kidding. Go look this up. They literally brought in the IDF to dig through the rubble. There's dude, it's Ron DeSantis had a whole ceremony where he was like patting the IDF on the back. He's like, thanks.
How can they rationalize this? How can we bring the IDF to handle American matters? This is insane.
Dude, I think we all remember.
So, for all those that don't know, McAfee was, he was going to expose a lot. But he had safeguards where all the information was supposed to get released. And so, you know, they took out that building in the hopes of getting rid of, you know, anything that he had in there that, you know, my understanding is he had a bunch of different houses all over the place, right? But it's interesting too. They must have had, their information must have led them to believe that it was there instead of his other ones, right? But they destroyed it. And who did they bring in, you know, to excavate it, to excavate the rubble? You know, well, first off, the mainstream media is not going to make any connections to that. They're not going to point that out. They're not going to show you that, right? They're going to divert your attention away from it. And they're going to divert your energy and your attention somewhere else, right? But, you know, what information were they looking for? Well, they're looking for, one, information that's going to show their hand, show their part in things. And so we gotta get rid of that at all costs. But then also, you know, they were probably hoping to get more information that they could use against other people. You know, but it's really interesting how we brought in a foreign country. We brought in a foreign country to clean up that rubble. A foreign country. Why? Are we not capable? Why? These are the questions that you're not supposed to ask, because these are the questions that lead to answers that no one's supposed to find out. You know, but controlled demolition. They got lots of experience with that too, right? Oh, what time is it? 9 o'clock and 11 minutes?
and security. We'll give you employment if you're unemployed. We'll give you welfare and security. All we want in return is all of your labor for all of your life. Didn't you read those 732 pages of the 1935 Social Security Act before you signed the application? The entire text of the contract is in writing. It's always been available. And any judge will look at you and say, why didn't you read the contract then? And you might say, well, I didn't know anything about the Social Security Act of 1935. Nobody presented the contract to me. That's because it's called an adhesion contract. You didn't hear of adhesion contracts in public school? By the way, who operates those public schools, ladies and gentlemen? And who operates Social Security? If you knew that you were worth $435,000 over the course of your life, can you understand why government doesn't want you to understand the Social Security Act? Now, the IRS Form 1040 comes into play right along this line also, and it is in the nature of an installment note, yearly payable upon continued exercise of the franchise and its derivative of the law merchant. Among other things, this is why the IRS manual in the legal reference guide, page 58, section 11 states, quote, in any case not provided for in this act, 26 U.S.C., the law merchant shall govern. All states have adopted this in their uniform business and commercial codes. In UCC 1-103 of Arkansas Uniform Commercial Code, 85-1-103, Washington Revised Code 62A1-103. Every state in the Union has such a provision. The government uses the power of attorney that was granted with the signing of the Social Security contract when they seek a redress of grievance. This is revealed in 26 U.S.C. 3101A, the connecting link with Title 42, the section on the 1935 Social Security Act, Title 2 and Title 11. In other words, law is written line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. It's the methodology whereby we keep you perpetually deceived because, first of all, you've never been trained in law, and secondly, those that are trained in law would have to be trained in legal research to ferret out the connecting links. We'll give you employment if you're unemployed.
So, you know, a lot of us are engaging in contracts completely unaware, you know. You know, part of it is you know, it's our own fault for not doing our own research, right? But then again, part of it's not our fault. It's the people that we elected. It's their fault, you know. Either one, for not doing their proper job and properly reading and vetting everything that they vote on, which with their vote is supposed to be our best interest. And so either you're negligent and ignorant and stupid ass motherfucker and skip the fucking crucial steps of reading every line and breaking it down for us. Either you're stupid or you're paid for. But then throw in the fact that the things that they have to vote on, they'll give them 700 pages and give them 1 hour to process it. 1 hour. Tell me that's not a corrupt system. Tell me that's not. That opens the door for corruption. So first off, you to put something that people have to vote on, you need an ample amount of time for everyone's whole team to evaluate it, to make sure it's good for them. Anything otherwise is corruption. Trying to rush the process so people don't have time to properly evaluate. And who would not want the proper time to evaluate? The ones that are trying to rush it in real quick, to get it in there real quick. Because we're going to profit off it, we're going to benefit, and my buddies are going to benefit, and these other buddies are going to benefit, and we're all fucking you, and you don't even know it. It's a fucked up system. But yet again, we leave these people, we even when these people are caught with their pants down, some of them literally, but we still allow them to stay in those positions. We allow them. Why do we do that? Why do we still allow them to continue to prove who they fucking are? They've already showed us. Kick them the fuck out. They talk about it and they don't be about it. Get the fuck out. Enough for talkers. It's time for doers. All the just talkers, shut the fuck up and get the fuck out. It's time for action. And not rushed, hurried action. You know, prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance. What prior proper planning did we have to make a educated vote? And that's what it's not educated, it's edumacated. Because they wish it was an educated vote. Or maybe it was. From the minimal amount of time and the minimal amount of information, the minimal amount of effort put into researching it, maybe. But the whole system is false. The whole system is designed for confusion and failure for us at the benefit of someone else. I don't agree with that. That sits wrong with me. It disrupts me on a soul level. And I hope it doesn't sit right with you too. I hope it disrupts you enough to speak up against it. I hope so. I could only wish so. Because the more of us that stay silent, the more and more that we become enslaved. All it takes for evil to survive is for good men and women to do nothing. All it takes for evil to survive is for good men and women to say nothing. And what does the government say? If you see something, say something, right? Unless it's government corruption where it's shh, shh, we don't talk about that. Or it's Zionism. Shh, we don't talk about that either. Shh. But propaganda, yeah, let's scream the propaganda from the bottom of our lungs. Let's do it. And whisper the truth. It's the whisper parts. It's the things that they say quietly. That's what you pay attention to. Not the distraction, what they're yelling about. What are they whispering about? What is the whisper? Follow the whisper.
The Nazi propaganda minister said that the bigger the lie, the faster. Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister, said that the bigger the lie, the faster it will spread. Well, somebody has fabricated a monstrous big lie that Israel had something to do with Charlie Kirk's horrific murder. This is insane. It is false. It is outrageous. Charlie Kirk was a giant, a once-in-a-century talent who defended freedom, defended America, defended our common Judeo-Christian civilization. Charlie loved Israel. He loved the Jewish people. He told me so in a letter that he sent me just a few months ago. One of my greatest joys as a Christian, he said, is advocating for Israel and forming alliances with Jews to protect Judeo-Christian civilization.
I can't even contain it. I can't even contain it. One of the last things that Charlie Kirk did was question Israel. Question his founders, his funders. To question it. That was the last things that the man did before he... Come on. Come on. And these narcissistic motherfuckers still trying to play on this dead man's name. And then the wife doesn't act like a grieving wife. Where's the grief? Where's the grief? With the stage performances that she was dying her whole life for? That she couldn't wait. Her husband's body wasn't even cold yet and she couldn't wait to get on a stage. Come on. Come on. And then come on, all the things that are resurfacing. Come on, she works with the CIA. Come on. She's an actor. Come on. Open your eyes. No, but she loves these people, right? And as another lie that she used to always say, right? My she wouldn't even, whatever. But when he came home, the story she tells all the time, when he came home on Fridays, she would say, Shabbat Shalom or whatever. It's like, no. He loved everyone, yes, but he was a Christian. Come on. And he made that very clear. He made it very clear where he stood. And he stood on the stance of, we should be questioning things. We should be questioning certain people and not give them blind allegiance. Oh, interesting. Really interesting. Some of the last things that he did. Really interesting. Some of the last things that he did. Look into that. Then you'll find out why he was silenced. Come on.
President Trump.
Is that it?
Threat to
The Israelis have always.
No. This is the last one.
The Israelis have always been very skillful at tracking what the U.S. government is doing, saying, thinking, and effort to influence. And they're by no means the only country that does it. Many do. They're just more effective at it than most. And the great advantage they have as compared to other countries is their influence in the Congress.
Around the time of the attack, the Washington Post had noted that the Jewish lobby could help determine the outcome of 169 of the 270 electoral votes needed to win the White House.
The big emotive words about the attack disappeared from press releases at the Pentagon, and a much more bland and neutral sounding discourse occurred. The Israelis have always been very skillful.
You know, it's they brag too. They brag. It's the way that it's, you know, it's the arrogance. It's the arrogance and the bragging about how they're so good at collecting information. Yet, when information comes out about how they collect their information, and the ways in which they acquire their information, and the ways that they use the information that they acquire, when information comes out about that, oh, we gotta shut that up. We gotta silence that because we can't allow anyone to see that. We can't allow anyone to see what we actually do. We can't allow anyone to see what we actually think. We can't allow anyone to think to see what we actually believe. We can't allow that. We can't allow anyone to see us for who we truly are and not who we parade and mask around and pretend to be, because it's all it is. It's a falsehood. Self-appointed, Netanyahu, self-appointed, just like your name. Self-appointed sociopath, self-made sociopath, self-made deceiver, and not even a good one. You're a poor deceiver. But yeah. Alright. Damn, it's already after 12. Alright, well, that's all the videos that I had saved up. So, I'm going to wrap that up right there. But thanks for tapping in. Thanks for all your likes, the shares, your comments. Thank you for the exchange of energy. And until next time.